I inherited a house, but I only make $36,000 a year. What to do in a situation like this? Well, a lot of people should start thinking about this because probably a lot of younger folks are going to find themselves in a similar situation because maybe you make more than $36,000 a year or some of these variables change. But the point that I'm trying to make in this video and the story we're going to go over here references what happens to someone when you inherit a house but you can't actually afford to keep that house. And I think that's the situation a lot of people are going to find themselves in, especially if they already have their own house or they have a family, lots of expenses, whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, inheriting a home can be a great thing and can be a life changer for a lot of people. You know, a couple weeks back, I made a video about how inheriting a house can actually be a nightmare because there are a lot of things that can go wrong with it, and it can end up actually costing you money sometimes depending on the situation. However, if you make $36,000 a year, and let's say the house has an $1,100 a month mortgage, plus you have property taxes and insurance, and the bills keep going up every year, you end up with another $1,000 in housing expenses per month for that house, and now you just have $1,000 left over. Is that realistic? Is that sustainable? Can anybody actually do that? The answer is no. If you find yourself in a situation where you inherit a house that you can't really afford to keep, the obvious answer is to sell the house. But the person that this happened to is worried that if they sell this house, then they're never actually going to get another shot at home ownership ever again in the future. So that's something that is a legitimate concern, right? Especially if you have a very low income and you inherit a house, you're kind of stuck between this rock and a hard place. On the one hand, it's great that I inherited this house. Maybe I can finally be a homeowner. But on the other hand, if you don't have the income to keep the house, how are you going to sustain that? So the first thing you have to do if you ever find yourself in a situation like this is you have to understand your legal rights and your obligations. When you inherit a house, the first thing you have to do is find out how you're going to take legal ownership of that house. If you're already on the mortgage or already a co-owner of the house and this isn't an issue, but if there needs to be a property transfer to you, then that can be a lengthy process, especially if the property needs to go through probate. Now, ideally, if you inherit a house, then you're going to inherit a home that is fully paid off, and that will drastically increase your odds of being able to afford it, even on a low income. But depending on the area, like say you inherited a house, you know, around here, you know, this is something I was talking to my wife about the other day. Like, you see houses around here in California, you know, $4 or $5, $8 million homes. Like, even if these homes are completely paid off and somebody inherits that house, what are the odds that somebody who inherits that house is going to be able to afford to keep that house? Most likely someone's going to have to sell it. But how many people out there have $4, $5, or $8 million to spend on a house? You know, this is kind of like the impending crisis that I see coming from a mile away in the future of the housing market. And then, of course, if you inherit the house and it actually does have a mortgage, well, if you have a low income, this is going to be problematic for you for sure. Some of the standard advice is that you may actually want to hire an attorney to make sure everything goes okay or you understand your rights. But guess what? If you're only making $36,000 a year, hiring an attorney costs money too. So that might not be a realistic option. Really, the best thing is, going back to that video I made a couple of weeks ago, is to have all of this set up between you and the person who's supposed to inherit the house before you pass away. So that way, when that eventually does happen, it's going to be easier for everyone. So the next thing you got to do if you inherit this house is you have to figure out the true cost of ownership. You know, once you deal with the legal technicalities and you get the title of the home transferred in your name, now it's time to figure out, can you actually afford to keep it? Hello.
Oh, you?
You know me?
Yeah, I see you.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Nancy Larson. I live right over there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you, Nancy. Hi,
What
pup.
do you call it?
My videos?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm walking
in this neighborhood.
I just chose it randomly. That's how I do it. I've walked here a couple times in the past when I've made these videos, so I kind of like know my areas around here, you know.
Yeah, it's
but
very mixed. You know, some homes are.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Others are. That one just sold for $2,400,000 some.
This one?
No, the one next.
Oh, next to it.
The black fencing.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then others are, you know, nobody even lives there.
I saw one down the street that was like falling apart, and then across the street there's like a beautiful home. What do you like about my videos?
Well, what do I like about them? On the spot. First of all, I believe that what you say is true. When you give the data, it
Mm-hmm.
goes with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm watching a lot of YouTubes, and I try to get a balanced Bloomberg, you, all kinds of other guys, Miles Franklin, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I subscribe to them and watch them. Sometimes it's difficult when you have all points of view to be able to know which one
I agree.
is correct. Yeah. But I've made some heavy decisions based on watching them. And the fact that the mainstream media doesn't cover anything, it's just
I know.
amazing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so of course the protests today, since I'm 81, I think I better stay home safe.
Well, see, it's pretty peaceful around here, so
Yeah, well, this is always peaceful, but it's so close to everything.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I've been here for 55 years, I think.
In the same house?
No, I lived in this house. My husband passed, and I wasn't able to afford to keep it.
I was just talking about that.
Yeah.
I swear to God, that's what my video is about today, about people inheriting homes and not being able to afford to keep the houses. I
Yeah.
feel like that's going to happen to a lot of people here because these homes are very expensive, and if you don't have the income to keep up with it, how are you going to keep the house?
Well, I got a reverse mortgage.
You did?
Yeah.
How's
I
that
hope
going?
That's a good idea. I did that 5 years ago. Sure is nice not to have to pay mortgage. And I'm 80 and I don't have any heirs that need my money.
Mm-hmm.
So when I pass or if I have to be put somewhere, then I'll have to sell it, you know.
Yeah,
But I have other income too, so that helps, pensions and
well, that's good.
well, what happened is there was a big flood here in 82.
And this street?
Yeah, in the whole area. About 1.5 feet of water throughout this whole neighborhood. And they came with the fire truck, picked us all up, and brought us to the rec center right over there. Spent a few days there. But then people wanted out after that flood area.
Yeah.
So we bought the house across the street and just kept it as a rental. So I moved there after I sold this place. That was a good thing we did, is to buy that house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But nothing since then, huh? That's a long time to go without an incident. Was that rain or is it the
Yeah.
bay that just came up?
Well, one of the big problems is the people who ran the town, the mayor and such, they lived in the hills.
They didn't
And
care.
so they didn't care that much.
Yep.
And we didn't make them. okay?
Typical politicians.
Yeah, but we have, as citizens, have to be involved too. And I
Right.
don't think we were either. So this happened, and then we recalled the council.
Good for
and the
you.
mayor. Yeah. My husband was the leader of that, and he's passed now. Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy to meet you, Nancy.
You too.
Thanks for
Why,
watching my channel.
Thank you for what you do.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
appreciate
It's
it.
my
Very
pleasure.
grateful.
I love doing it.
Yeah.
And I love, when I run into people like this and
Do you
I've been,
get very good responses, or do you ever get people who are critical of what you do?
all the time people are critical
the
of what I do.
haters, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I try not even reading the comments as much anymore because there's so
Yeah.
many negative ones, but there's
hard.
also a lot of good
And
ones
it's
too,
hard not to take it personal,
Yeah. I
even though
mean,
you say you're not.
exactly. After doing this like 6 years now almost, it's, you kind of,
6 years.
yeah.
Wow.
you develop like that kind of hard, rough skin for it, but it's still once in a
I
while.
mean, we're all human.
Yeah,
We
we're
all
all
want
human.
love and acceptance and all that.
Exactly. You just want to know you're doing the right thing, you want to know that you're doing and you're helping people.
And the poor people and struggling that's going on, you don't have energy or time to educate yourself and do something about these things. I think that's a problem too. You
Absolutely.
just don't have energy, time.
Hi
And
there.
a lot of people think, of course, they don't have any power to change, which is wrong. They're showing us today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So keep up the good work.
I will.
Let people like me out there really appreciate it and are grateful.
That makes me very happy to hear.
Yeah.
Well,
Do
thank you for
travel
watching.
with somebody when you're doing all this, or?
Yeah, my wife comes with
Oh,
me.
great.
Yeah.
You have a partner. Yeah, that's important too.
Staying here for the summer again.
Where are you going next after here? You just randomly, you don't know?
Well, I'm going to be here for the summer and then I'll go back to Miami.
How do you pick where you're going to shoot?
Oh, shoot the videos, you mean?
Yeah.
I kind of, since I've been up here so many times already, I know the area pretty well. And I try to go to some new spots here and there, but I like to mix it up. Like I'll walk through a neighborhood like this today, and then I'll try to do another video walking past maybe the creek over here by Larkspur or something and just change up the scenery. Another one through the redwood forest.
Yeah, and I like that you're not fear mongering. You're just telling.
One of my critics say that a lot, fear mongering, you're trying to scare
We need to
people.
know.
Like,
Well, it is scary, but we need to
right,
know.
it's right.
And as a citizen, you're responsible for taking action to protect your freedoms in democracy, I think.
Yeah.
I think, and this is a theory, and not many people like when I say this. The people who voted for Trump, maybe it's a good idea because kind of accelerates getting the baddies out. I mean, he's so bad, and we're now responding. What if he wasn't in the White House doing these things?
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, they're trying to take over.
Exactly. Well,
so maybe, he's the catalyst to get us going.
that's one of the things I've been talking about when it comes to the economy. Like, if you're going to just rip off the Band-Aid, I think it's better to do that. It's better to just make it worse and then let's get it better. I think that's the only way to have things heal.
Yes, right. I don't always do what I should be doing either. Life gets busy and you have other challenges. But I'm almost 81 now, so I got to be safe.
I agree. Yeah, you got to do what you have to do to make sure you're protected until you don't need money anymore.
If you think that you've got it made and you're rich and all that, it's not easy for anybody, I don't think.
I mean, you get richer.
Bezos, he lost his woman. Yeah.
That old saying, right? More money, more problems.
Yeah, I mean, you
got
can't
that
get away
too.
from the challenges of life.
No matter
How
what you do.
What are you going to do about it? That's a Paul Simon song that he wrote. What you going to do about it? That's what I want to know,
Yeah.
I think it was about Carrie Fisher because she had her challenges mentally and they broke up over it, and he wrote that song about it. Oh, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying hello to me.
Yeah. Not very many people out today. It's very quiet.
Well, I only saw one other person walking.
They're all protesting.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
We all got better things to do.
Right. Okay.
Nice to meet you, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Well, that was awesome. Shout out to Nancy for stopping and saying hello. I think there's just so much to learn from people like her that have been around the block and have seen some things, and she literally mentioned the situation that I'm talking about here right now in this video. Like, she told you right there. I don't think you're fear-mongering, Michael. Yeah, it's scary stuff, but people have to know what's going on. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to inheriting a house like this, people have situations that come up, and like for her, she inherited a house and she was able to do a reverse mortgage. But, somebody like this young kid that's only making $36,000 a year wouldn't be able to do something like that because you need to be a senior citizen in order to do a reverse mortgage. So you can be presented with the same challenge in life, but have to go about it a completely different way just because of your age difference. So let's talk more about this. Because the reality is, if the monthly payments eat up 2/3 of your income to stay in a house, you're not going to be able to stay in it. You could look at refinancing the home or something like that. And they even go as far to say that maybe you can even look at some property tax relief options because some states offer that. But yeah, good luck with that one. I haven't seen many people get too much relief when it comes to property taxes, especially if you're younger. Some states have more property tax relief and protections for senior citizens or veterans or people with disabilities. But in terms of just inheriting a house when you're in your 30s and you don't have a high income, there's not much love for somebody like that. And you also have to think about the other costs of home ownership. It's not just the mortgage and the taxes and insurance you have to pay. You have to pay the utilities. You have to pay for sometimes major expenses like a new roof or a new HVAC system, something like that. And those things can be tens of thousands of dollars. Even basic maintenance on the house just to keep up appearances usually is going to run you at least 1% of the property's value per year. And if you don't have the income, how are you going to afford it? So the obvious thing is to look into increasing your income, but obviously if somebody was in this situation where they had an idea to increase their income, they probably would have already done it before they even inherited the house. But maybe similarly to like when somebody has a child, inheriting a house might just be that extra push that somebody needs in order to get them more motivated to go out there and find a way to actually bring in more income. Because like this kid's saying here, this might be my only shot at home ownership. So if you're making $36K a year, it's probably time to step up to the plate to try to find a way that, how can I at least double this or make an extra 15 or 20K a year to make this more comfortable and doable? One thing you could do is you could end up in a house hacking situation, especially if you're single or you don't mind having roommates, and that can really help pay for the property. And they're under close supervision, so that way you move into the house, they live in the house with you, and if you have any problems, it could be easier and faster to get rid of a problematic tenant, but hopefully that wouldn't be the case. You could also turn the property into a rental, especially if there's no mortgage on the property, because a property with no mortgage, you're going to have a high chance of being able to actually turn a profit as a landlord. But once again, this is a huge step when it comes to financials and when it comes to someone's capabilities, right? You might not have the wisdom or the know-how to become a landlord. A lot of people just say, oh, it's just easy, just rent it, you know? It's not that simple. There's a lot that goes into being a landlord. Even for a seasoned real estate professional, somebody like myself that sold real estate for many years and dealt with the ins and outs of the business day to day, it's still not a simple business to be in. There's lots of surprises, there's lots of expenses that come up. And you have to be prepared to make some really tough decisions sometimes, like evicting someone or turning people down or choosing what needs to be repaired today and what can wait till later. But also you should really consider if that particular home is the right fit for you anyways, because just because you inherit a house doesn't mean that's the place you should be living in. You know, maybe it's in the wrong location, maybe it's too far away from your work. Maybe you want to have a family and the school district is terrible. Maybe the house is way too big and you don't ever plan on having a family or anything and it's just you. So really you have to take a look at it and give it an honest view of, am I really going to stay in this house long term? Is this something worth keeping? And if the answer is no, it probably makes more sense to just sell the house sooner rather than later and get it over with. Because by taking that profit off the table, well, you thought maybe you won't be able to become a homeowner one day. Well, maybe you can become a homeowner one day if you're able to increase your income, and now you have a down payment saved because you sold that inherited house. So there's always ways to do things, guys. There's, just like Nancy was saying, we all have challenges. It doesn't matter how old you are or how rich you are, anything like that. You're always going to be faced with difficult decisions in life, and it all comes down to how you handle those decisions that makes the biggest difference between people who succeed and the ones who don't. Now here's a real estate story that was sent to me that I think is important to cover, because I never really talk about this region of the country, which is the Mid-Atlantic region. Eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, Rhode Island, Washington, D.C., Virginia, places like that. And the most recent data from Bright MLS, which is one of the MLSs in the area, just reported that 481 listings were canceled during the week ending June 8th, which is the highest weekly total in 5 years. That's a 40% increase from the same period last year, and it's up 33% from the previous week. And it turns out that we saw the most canceled listings in the Philadelphia area, where canceled listings were up 60% compared to the same week in 2024. So what on earth is going on in the Mid-Atlantic where all of these sellers are canceling these listings? Well, most likely it's growing uncertainty among buyers and sellers. You know, buyers are not out there shopping nearly as much as they were before. And at the same token, sellers are not seeing the buyers show up to their open houses or not seeing a lot of showings, and they're like, well, this isn't working, maybe I should just give up because I'm not getting the price that I want. And some people are in the position to do that. Because the interesting part is showing activity in the area remains stable. And so if showings are stable and contract signings are stable, the only thing I can think of that can be happening is sellers are not getting the results that they were hoping for by listing their home for sale, and they're just giving up. Now in Miami, what they do is they don't give up, they do the complete opposite, and they leave the house for sale for 3, 4, 5 years and hope that they're going to sell it at some point. But the reality that a lot of sellers have to face right now is that the market is just shifting in favor of buyers in pretty much every segment we can take a look at. In fact, according to some of the most recent Redfin data, there's a lot of reasons to feel optimistic as a buyer right now. Right now is supposed to be the busy time of year for the housing market, and the amount of homes selling above asking price is at 28%, which might sound like a lot, but that's actually a huge reduction compared to the last couple of years. Last year at this time, it was 32% selling above asking price, and during the peak of the housing market in 2022 is a whopping 53% of homes selling above asking price. So, like I said before and acknowledged, there are places that still have some bidding wars, and you do see some areas where homes sell for over asking price, but this is no longer the norm. And the reason why it's important to pay attention to how many homes sell above listing price is because it is a big indicator of where demand is right now. Sellers are losing the ability to ask whatever they want for their property and are starting to get reality checked with the price. And that reflects in the very next metric, which is that home sales are slowing down. You know, the properties that are selling are spending more time on the market, and pending home sales are coming down, so much so that pending sales under contract within 2 weeks has dropped to 37.6, down from 40% this time last year. And both of these numbers are at the lowest they've been since the spring home buying season of 2020, which means that these homes are just not flying off the shelf like they used to. Right now, the U.S. housing market has roughly 500,000 more sellers than buyers out there looking to sell or buy a house. And that's a pretty big gap. And it's funny because one of the most common narratives we still hear about real estate is that there is a major housing shortage. But if that were the case, then why do we have 500,000 more sellers than buyers? And it all comes down to one thing: price. It's something I see a lot in the comments. I saw this in my last real estate video. A lot of you guys commented about this, and this is the truth. Somebody had a very good comment that said something along the lines of like, well, I think there is a 4 million home shortage, but those 4 million homes that we're short are reasonably priced homes, you know, in the $200,000 to $350,000 range. And I agree, because that's what most people can actually afford. And in fact, that's like the limit of what most people can actually afford. And there's just not that many homes in that price range. So there's a lot of houses for sale, but they're all way too expensive, which means that the homes that are for sale are gonna have to get cheaper if anyone's gonna buy them. You still have a lot of sellers out there who bought their houses for insanely high prices during the pandemic and are hoping to recoup their initial purchase price and then some, and turn around and just flip these properties and make all this money, but that's not very realistic. This is what I was talking about when I was talking to Nancy about the houses. Check out how beautiful this house is right here. And then right across the street, you got that one. That's like falling apart. The contrast is pretty crazy. But I see this a lot in Miami too. You'll see some nice brand new houses, and right next door is an old dump with complete overgrowth. So it's everywhere. But this is the biggest indicator that things are switching to a buyer's market right now, is the gap, not just between sellers and buyers, but also the gap between median listing prices and median selling prices in the U.S. housing market. Take a look at this. Sellers are asking a median price right now of $425,000 at listing, but buyers are only paying $397,000 when they actually purchase, which is a 7% discount. And, you know, just a few years ago, the opposite was true. People were overpaying and, you know, bidding up these prices, and prices were going up 7% a year. And, you know, I personally look at this as like a 7% drop in home prices. Redfin's only officially predicting a 1% drop in home prices this year. But if you have to actually lower the price of your home 7 or 10% to get it sold, what is that, guys? That's a 7 to 10% loss in value of the house. But the reality is the value of any home, or any piece of real estate for that matter, is only ever worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. So this is a loss for sellers, but a gain for buyers. But even for sellers that purchased more than 4 or 5 years ago are probably still coming out okay at the end of this when they sell their home, and are still going to make a nice profit. As far as when we're going to see home prices come down to where they truly need to be, I don't know, guys. That's anybody's guess. Maybe they'll never come down to that point. I really don't know. Because even if they come down another 20%, a lot of people still won't be able to afford homes even at that price, because the cost of living is simply too high these days and the incomes just aren't keeping up with it. I did have more to report, but since I ran into Nancy and we had a nice conversation, I'll save some of these stories for a future video. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.